If you've ever walked away from someone feeling smaller than when you arrived, smaller than you were before that conversation even started, this video is going to show you exactly why. And it's not what you think. You didn't lose because you were weak. You didn't get controlled because you were stupid, or naive, or too trusting. You got controlled because someone, somewhere, learned a mechanism. A precise, repeatable, almost invisible mechanism for bending another person's will without ever raising their voice. And by the end of this video, you're going to see that mechanism so clearly that it will never work on you again. I need to be honest with you before we go any further. Most people who watch this will nod along, feel something for 20 minutes, and forget every word of it by tomorrow morning. A few of you will not. A few of you are going to carry this with you for the rest of your life. Which one you become depends entirely on whether you're willing to look directly at something uncomfortable. This isn't guesswork. What you're about to hear is grounded in real psychology, from Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments to Robert Cialdini's documented principles of influence. Not opinion, not vibes. Mechanism. Remember this line, because you're going to need it again before we're done. They can only rule the mind that hands them the keys. Most people spend their entire lives handing those keys over without ever noticing their own hand moving. They call it kindness. They call it loyalty. They call it love. The few who wake up call it something else entirely. But before I show you the 7 levers they use on you, you need to understand why control works in the first place. And it isn't weakness, it's design. Picture this. You're staring at your phone, rereading the same text message for the 5th time, trying to find the hidden meaning in 3 short sentences. Trying to figure out what you did wrong. And here's the part that should unsettle you. You did nothing wrong. There was nothing to find. The uncertainty itself was the point, because control was never really about force. Force is loud, and force gets noticed. Real control is quieter than that. It's engineered uncertainty, planted just carefully enough that you start doing the controlling yourself. Psychologist Julian Rotter spent years studying something called locus of control. What he found was simple and devastating. People who believe things are just happening to them are far easier to steer than people who believe they author their own outcomes. The naive majority think power is about who's stronger, louder, richer. The awake few understand something deeper. Power was never about strength. It's about where you choose to locate it, inside yourself or in someone else's hands. So let's name the 7 levers, one by one, because once you can name a thing, it loses its grip on you. Lever number 1, manufactured uncertainty. Think of someone in your life who ran hot and cold. One day, warmth, attention, laughter that made you feel like the only person in the room. The next day, nothing. Silence, a shortness in their voice you couldn't explain. And you found yourself doing something strange, something almost humiliating when you look back on it now. You started performing, trying harder, chasing whatever version of them showed up yesterday, hoping if you just said the right thing, you could bring it back. That's not an accident. That's a mechanism, and it has a name, BF. Skinner discovered it decades ago in a lab, watching how animals responded to reward. Consistent reward creates a habit. But inconsistent reward, reward that shows up sometimes and not others, creates an obsession. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it is the exact engine behind every slot machine on Earth. You don't pull the lever because you win every time. You pull it because you might. People do this to other people, sometimes without even realizing it themselves. Warmth, then cold, praise, then punishment, and your nervous system, wired for survival, starts treating their approval like a jackpot worth chasing at any cost. Here is where the weak and the powerful split. The weak keep pulling the lever, convinced that if they just try one more time, today will be a good day again. The powerful do something different. They stop chasing the pattern and start watching it. They notice the rhythm, the timing, the way affection always seems to arrive, right when they were about to walk away. And the moment you can see the pattern stops owning you. But uncertainty alone isn't enough to hold someone in place. They need one more thing from you. They need you to believe you owe them something. Lever number 2. Reciprocity turned into a leash. Think of the favor that was never really a favor. The bailout when you were short on rent. The gift that showed up with no occasion attached. The help that came wrapped in the words, "Don't worry about it. I was just being nice." At the time, it felt like generosity. Later, you realized it was an invoice with no due date and no visible numbers, but you paid it anyway. You paid it in loyalty, in silence, in saying yes when every part of you wanted to say no. This isn't your imagination. Robert Cialdini spent his career studying this exact principle. Human beings carry a deep, often unconscious obligation to repay what's given to them, even when they never asked for it in the first place. A single unsolicited gift is enough to shift the entire balance of a relationship. Give someone something small, and you own a piece of their future behavior. The naive spend years repaying a debt that was manufactured the moment it was handed to them. They keep saying yes, keep showing up, keep believing that gratitude is the same thing as obligation. The awake learn to separate the two. They can say thank you, mean it completely, and still never sign the invisible contract underneath it. Because here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Once someone convinces you that you owe them, they don't even need to ask for anything anymore. You'll do it yourself, you'll volunteer it. You'll call it loyalty, or love, or being a good person, and never once notice the leash in your own hand. If that one hit close to home, drop a 1 in the comments. If you've ever caught yourself trusting someone just because of their title and not their track record, you're not alone in this. That brings us to the next lever, authority. Lever number 3. Manufactured authority. Think of a moment you overrode your own instincts because someone else seemed to know better. He's older, you told yourself. She's successful, so she must be right. He speaks with so much confidence, surely he's seen something I haven't. And so you folded your own judgment away, quietly, without even a fight, and handed the decision to someone else simply because of how they carried themselves. This is one of the most studied, most unsettling findings in all of psychology. In the early 1960s, Stanley Milgram brought ordinary people into a lab and asked them to deliver what they believed were increasingly painful, even dangerous, electric shocks to another person in the next room. Most of them didn't want to. Many of them protested out loud, hands shaking, voices cracking. And yet, when the man in the lab coat calmly said, "Please continue," the overwhelming majority did exactly that. Not because they were cruel, because they had already surrendered their judgment to a symbol of authority. A title does that. A confident tone does that. A person who simply acts certain enough, often enough, does that. The weak outsource their conscience to whoever seems to be in charge. They confuse confidence with correctness, seniority with wisdom, a calm voice with a true one. The powerful do something far more disciplined. They learn to separate the person from the position. They ask, quietly, every single time, is this true because they said it, or is it true on its own? That single habit, that one small act of mental separation, is worth more than almost anything else in this video. But authority alone doesn't work on someone who already feels safe, surrounded, and sure of who's in their corner. So next, they go after your safety itself. Lever number 4. Isolation, wearing the mask of concern. Think of the moment it started. It probably didn't sound like a threat. It probably sounded like closeness. I just don't think your friends really get you like I do. Your families never really supported you the way I have. Small comments, said softly, almost tender in their delivery, and slowly, without a single dramatic moment you could point back to, your world got smaller. The people who used to check in on you stopped, because you stopped answering. The circle that once surrounded you narrowed down to one person, standing at the center of everything. This pattern shows up again and again in research on coercive control and in the study of high control groups, and the researchers who study it are consistent on one point. Isolation is rarely announced. It's rarely a demand. It's introduced as intimacy, as specialness, as no one understands you the way I do. And once your outside world has quieted down, there's no one left to reflect your reality back to you, except the one person who benefits from your dependence. The naive mistake this shrinking world for closeness. They feel chosen, singled out, finally understood. What they don't see is that a relationship built on exclusion isn't intimacy. It's a fence, and they're standing inside it. The awake protect their outside relationships fiercely, almost stubbornly, because they understand that a healthy bond adds people to your life. It never subtracts them. Isolation makes you dependent, but dependence by itself still isn't enough. For the next lever to work, they need something more than your circle. They need you doubting your own memory too. If lever 4 just described your life right now, type "I see it" in the comments. You are not alone in this, and you are not crazy. Lever number 5. Reality distortion. Think of the moment you brought something up, calmly, carefully, only to be told it never happened at all. That's not what I said. You're remembering it wrong. You're too sensitive. Delivered with total calm, no raised voice, no visible anger, just quiet, patient certainty. And somewhere along the way, you stopped defending your own memory and started apologizing for it instead. This has a name in psychology, and it's a well-documented pattern, not a fringe theory. It works precisely because it's gradual. One distorted memory is easy to dismiss, but enough of them, over enough time, and you start to distrust the one instrument you actually need to survive: your own perception. Marcus Aurelius wrote something almost 2,000 years ago that cuts straight through this. You have power over your mind, not outside events. He wasn't just talking about staying calm. He was pointing at something sharper. Your interpretation of what happened to you is the last piece of territory no one can take from you, unless you hand it over willingly. The weak surrender that territory the moment it's challenged. They rewrite their own history to keep the peace. Now hear this clearly, because it matters. This isn't about refusing to ever admit you're wrong. The powerful stay completely open to real accountability, to genuine mistakes, to fair correction. What they refuse to do is abandon a memory they know is true simply because someone said it with enough confidence. Once your reality bends to theirs, the next lever almost isn't even necessary anymore, but they use it anyway. Fear. Lever number 6. Fear, spent like currency. Think of the feeling right before the phone rings. That small drop in your stomach before you even know what's on the other end. Think of walking into a room and reading someone's mood before they've said a single word, adjusting your voice, your posture, your entire self, just to avoid whatever version of them might be waiting. That's not caution. That's fear. And fear is expensive. It costs you a little more of yourself every single time you pay it. Machiavelli wrote a line in The Prince that people love to quote out of context. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. It sounds like permission. It sounds like a blueprint. But read what he actually built that argument on, and it falls apart fast. Machiavelli was describing how insecure rulers tried to hold on to power over kingdoms, not how one human being should treat someone they claim to care about. And even in his own writing, he warned that rule by fear is brittle. It breeds hatred. It collapses the moment the fear stops working. So let's be precise here, because this matters more than almost anything else in this video. Real power without becoming toxic. That's the line. If someone needs you afraid of them to keep you close, that isn't strength you're witnessing. That's a person who has nothing else left to hold you with. The truly secure, the genuinely powerful, never need anyone's fear. They don't require it, because their worth was never built on your discomfort in the first place. Fear controls the body in this moment, but the final lever is the most dangerous of all, because it controls your future. Lever number 7. Scarcity of hope. Think of the words that were never meant to comfort you at all. No one else would want you. This is as good as it gets, said just often enough that some quiet part of you started to believe it. Started to wonder if leaving meant walking out into nothing, into a life emptier than the one you already had. Robert Cialdini documented this too. Human beings irrationally overvalue whatever they believe is scarce, whatever seems to be disappearing, running out, or impossible to replace. It works on products, it works on opportunities, and it works with devastating precision on relationships. Because the fear of losing your only door out feels identical to the fear of losing everything. Seneca wrote something that answers this directly. He who is brave is free. Real freedom has always required the willingness to lose the very thing you're most afraid of losing. The naive stay, convinced that leaving means losing everything worth having. The awake recognize the actual mechanism at work. A controller's greatest weapon was never their strength. It was convincing you they're the only door left standing, when they were only ever one door in a hallway full of them. And here's something worth saying clearly. This lever doesn't care how old you are. It works exactly the same at 22, sitting in a first serious relationship, as it does at 68, inside a marriage that's lasted 40 years. Age doesn't protect you from this. Only awareness does. Now that you can see all 7 levers laid bare, side by side, it's time to put them together. Because knowing one lever is interesting. Knowing all 7 is armor. Let's put it all together, one final time. Manufactured uncertainty, warmth, then silence, keeping you pulling the lever like it's a slot machine. Reciprocity turned into a leash. A favor you never asked for, quietly rewritten into a debt. Manufactured authority, a title or a confident voice standing in for the truth. Isolation, disguised as concern. A world that got smaller while it was being called closeness. Reality distortion. A memory you knew was true, traded away because someone said otherwise with enough calm. Fear as currency. A room you learned to read before you even walked into it. And scarcity of hope. The belief that one closing door meant every door was closing. 7 levers. 7 quiet mechanisms, running underneath ordinary conversations, ordinary relationships, ordinary days. Here's the truth underneath all of it. One kind of person still gets pulled by them, again and again, without ever knowing why. Another kind of person just watches the strings move. But naming the levers isn't the finish line. It's the door. So walk through that door with me for a moment. On the other side of it isn't coldness. It isn't becoming someone who manipulates instead of getting manipulated. Someone who now plays the same games that were once played on you. That's not the version of you I'm trying to build here. What's waiting on the other side is something quieter, and honestly, something better. It's becoming ungrippable. Someone who can be loved without being leashed. Someone who can be close to people without disappearing into them. This is power without becoming toxic. That's the whole point. You don't need anyone's fear. You don't need anyone's silence, or their obedience, or their dependence, to know your own worth. Real strength never required someone else's weakness standing next to it. And I want you to hear this clearly. Whether you're 20 years old, just starting to figure out what love and respect are even supposed to feel like, or 70 years old, only now recognizing a pattern that's followed you for decades. It is never too late to see it. The moment you see the lever is the moment it stops working on you. Every single time, Marcus Aurelius was right, all those centuries ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That was never just philosophy. That was the whole answer waiting for you this entire time. You already have the keys. Stop handing them over. So tell me, out of all 7 levers, which one hit the hardest? Was it the uncertainty, the isolation, the fear? Comment the number below, because I read every single one, and it tells me exactly what to cover next. If lever 5, the reality distortion, was the one that landed deepest, that's not a coincidence. It's usually the deepest wound, because it doesn't just cost you a relationship. It costs you trust in your own memory. So next time, I'm going to show you exactly how to rebuild that trust, piece by piece, after someone spent years quietly bending it. Until then, remember what you learned today. You already have the keys. Stop handing them over.